Now to the sentencing of the man behind the Varsity Blues scandal. Rick Singer faces years in prison for illegally helping wealthy parents get their children into some of the nation's top colleges. Eva Pilgrim is live at the courthouse in Boston. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Georgia. It was a massive sting exposing an ugly truth that admission to college can be bought, bartered, and stolen for some. Today, Rick Singer, the architect behind that complex web of bribes and schemes, learns his fate.
This morning, it's Judgment Day for the mastermind behind the national college admissions scandal, Operation Varsity Blues, who helped take down a long list, a who's who of the rich and famous. Rick Singer is set to be sentenced later today for his role in helping clients sneak their kids through what he called the side door, cheating their way into some of the country's most elite schools. Singer pleading guilty to charges including money laundering and obstruction of justice.
It's definitely a signal that the information that he's provided has taken them this far and probably no further. Whatever information that he's already provided, they've exhausted.
The college advisor turned cooperating witness, helping the feds take down more than 33 parents. But even still, the prosecution recommending Singer serve 6 years behind bars. His lawyers asking for a max of 6 months. In court documents asking for leniency, citing childhood trauma.
When the state makes a determination, they are looking at the fact that he did provide this cooperation, they did secure these other convictions. And so in their mind, that's already been factored into the 6 years. So that's going to carry a lot of weight with the judge.
Federal prosecutors say Singer took in more than $25 million from his clients. Singer admitting to an elaborate scheme that included faking athletic credentials, photoshopping pictures, and cheating on standardized tests, with some parents spending upwards of $6 million in bribes. Desperate Housewives star Felicity Huffman pleaded guilty after paying $15,000 to bribe an SAT administrator. She served 2 weeks behind bars. Full House star Lori Loughlin and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, also convicted in the scheme, put up $500,000 in exchange for getting their 2 daughters recruited to the USC crew team, even though they didn't participate in crew.
Anything to say, Lori?
Loughlin sentenced to 2 months, her husband 5 months. So far, more than 50 parents, coaches, and test takers have been found guilty, most sentenced to at least some jail time.
So how much time could Singer see? In these cases so far, we've seen everything from probation to time behind bars. The longest sentence so far, 2.5 years. That went to a former Georgetown tennis coach. He was accused of taking $3 million in bribes. Guys.
All right, Eva. Thanks so much.
Okay, so y'all just heard that right there. And it's been a long time since I've done anything on this particular case right here. As many of you know who have been following me at least since 2019. I think that's when this all popped off, was in 2019. It's crazy. It seems so long ago, mainly due to what happened the following year. When I did a video literally talking about all the people that was involved with this whole college admission scandal. I didn't even know it had a title that they actually officially gave it. When they call it the Varsity Blues college cheating scandal. I didn't even know they gave it a title. But I had did a video where I was highlighting like all 50 participants, and that was not an easy video to put together to get all those pictures and talk about all those names and all those people. But that's a story that I stayed on top of for as up until what I thought was the end when it came to Lori Loughlin and her husband. And I told you once they get done with her, they're not going to really harp on this anymore. Until I forgot about the mastermind behind the whole thing, which was this guy right here, William Rick Singer. And thankfully, one of my subscribers in the Discord actually posted this article in which you heard the audio from, because I'm going to be honest, so much stuff has happened since then, I completely forgot about this. So they didn't say in the audio that you heard what he got sentenced to, but according to Yahoo News, he got sentenced to 42 months, which is roughly around 3.5 years. That's pretty much what he got for this. And he also got like 3 additional years of probation, which to me, the punishment does not, the sentencing does not fit the crime of what he did. In my honest opinion, he would have gotten way more time. Now, you heard in the audio that they were trying to, or they wanted to give him 6 years, behind bars for what he did, but his lawyers were arguing for 6 months. So when it all boils down to it, they found like an in-betweener year and said, okay, we're just going to give him 3.5 years. Again, the punishment does not fit the crime. In my opinion, he would have got more than 6 years. 6 years, I guess, if that's the max they was going to be able to go for him. 6 months, out of the question. For what he did, they said this man racked up $25 million from this scheme. They said this man filed made Photoshop documents, made fake documents, fake test scores. I mean, you can go back and look through the archives and really research this whole case, because it was a big mess when all of this stuff really came out. But what got me when I heard the audio was when his defense had said, let's give this man 6 months. And one of the reasons as to why they wanted to give him 6 months was citing quote unquote childhood trauma. What did childhood trauma, alleged childhood trauma, assuming he suffered any, has to do with what he did as a grown man? That doesn't even match up. That doesn't make any sense. But then again, we are living in an establishment where it's Operation Protect the White Boy at any and all costs. So anything that they could try to pull out of their ass or out of at least a magic hat, they will do. Childhood trauma. Are you kidding me? Childhood trauma does not play in this situation right here. So I don't even know why they even tried to use it. That was silly. I would have laughed at them if that was my courtroom. I would have to try to contain my laughter if I was that judge or anybody in that courtroom. Really? Childhood trauma. I know y'all heard that. I almost paused the video right there in disbelief when they tried to push that as a narrative. I can almost pretty much guess what type of prison they're going to put him into. They probably going to put him in a federal prison because this was seen as a federal crime. Although he, in my opinion, should have got the Bernie Madoff treatment. But let's be real here. While the crime he committed was very messed up, he ain't go the lengths that Bernie did. At least he didn't have long enough to do it. I give him some more time, he would have probably made it there. Just a couple more years. The following year probably would have messed him up a little bit due to, unforeseen circumstances. But then again, I'm not surprised he got this short length amount of time, because look at all the other people that was involved in the little bit of time that they got. I mean, they said Felicity Huffman did 2 weeks, and I don't even think she did the whole 2 weeks. Lori Loughlin, who knows if she actually did the 2 months or her husband doing the 5 months. I think the shortest sentence I saw someone get was like a day. I kid you not. I think it was somebody in the mix who got literally 24 hours behind bars for the role they played in this. And the common theme of all the people that was involved with this, with the exception of one person, is that they were all PC. It was only one black man that was involved with this, but he worked more so alongside William Rick Singer. He was one of his, I guess you can say, his horsemen. Now, I don't know what actually came of him, because they kind of kept him out of the mix. So I don't know what his punishment was. I can't even remember the guy's name. I could barely tell you what the guy looked like, but I do know he was a black man. But what also got me when I was talking about this story in its infancy was when a lot of people tried to drag Dr. Dre into this. If y'all remember, Dr. Dre, I think his daughter had got into a school or something like that, and some kind of miscommunication had fired off, and they were trying to say, oh, look at Dr. Dre. He's doing underhanded things in order to get his daughter into these schools and whatnot. And that happened right around the same time as this was starting to happen. I think it was like a couple weeks later, but it was still in its infancy stages, because this happened in March of 2019. So going from March to April, you're talking about a month jump or just a couple weeks later, depending on when in the month it happened. I think it was like mid-March when all this stuff started to happen. And that didn't go anywhere. Like, that was literally dead on arrival. I said, y'all tried it. Y'all tried hard to, reach with this one, but it didn't work, because they were trying to shift off of this, but it was just too much of a big snowball effect that it just wasn't working. And even with all those people that was attached to this, they still managed to find a way to throw all of that under the bus as much as they could. Because granted, they were focused more so on Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin because they were the two biggest names attached to this. But when I did the rundown of all the people that were involved, we're talking about people that were working for Fortune 500 companies. You had CEOs, people who own conglomerates. Like, these were people who were like in the top 1% of earners, not just in the establishment, but some across the globe, that were doing this in order to get their kids into these schools, knowing they did not have the chops to get in themselves, busting it as like everybody else. And the reason why I wanted this story to stay out there as much as it could was because it would hold up a mirror to show who is the mediocre party in this establishment. Because, you know, you always have these individuals floating around here talking about they have the best IQ and this high IQ, and black people got a low IQ, and we got to do this and affirmative action this and affirmative action that. And speaking of affirmative action, we know who that benefited the most, and that was white women, and still does to this day. That's why I wanted this story to stay in the news as much as possible. But alas, it faded into obscurity. It literally faded into obscurity with all the stuff that was going on. And that's intentional because, that's how mainstream media rolls. Just like January 6th, they love to say how black people are these animals, they're monkeys, they're apes, they're terrorizing everything, they're tearing up their neighborhoods. But we weren't the ones that went out in droves on January 6th, 2021 to the Capitol, the biggest federal building in America, and run up into it like wild animals because we didn't get our way from that election. But they tried their best to keep that out there. I'm surprised that stayed in the news as much as possible. The thing is, I don't think that something like that could have faded so fast, because it was very hard to avoid, because it was so many people and it was the Capitol. Like, that was hard to avoid. It's not like they ran up into a museum and just kind of ransacked it. But the fact that that happened and they tried to go away from it, try to backpedal or backslide away from it, that says a lot. And then when you think about the so-called punishments that fell before those individuals, and you look at the so-called punishments that befell before the people involved with this, they parallel with each other, and we know why that is. We live in an establishment where people of a certain group, of a certain ethnic background, of a certain demographic, no matter what part of the European landmass they claim, as long as they claim to be white or palm colored, they will get the benefit of the doubt. They will skate, they will slide right on by, they will float through, they will wiggle their way into innocence when they are extremely and utterly guilty.